All right, so I promised story. So let me start with a story. And as I tell the story, think about what your story is. And so I'll begin this way. So I left Accenture, and about 2 months after I left Accenture, I got a call from a partner that I'd worked with on one of my last projects, and said, the client is doing a post-merger integration, $1 billion acquisition. And they're selling each of the functional verticals one by one to each of the consultants, putting each one out for bid. And you guys know how that goes, right? And so, but they're willing to not put the commercial function out to bid if you come and do the work. And I was like, well, dude, I don't work at Accenture anymore. So the answer is no. And I'm like, okay. So he went away for like a day, came back and said, what would you be willing to do? Would you be willing to come back and do this? I'm like, there's all sorts of issues with the partner coming back and trying to do work through, blah, blah, blah. And so he worked out some of the details, like, would you be willing to do this? I'm like, okay. I love the client. The client was a lot of fun. So then we sat down and started planning out the orals. And you guys know how orals go. So, and the typical way to do that. Now I've been, I'm looking at being an entrepreneur now, and I'm going like, okay, I can get a team of Accenture people for this thing. So I don't have to go get that myself. I'll go get that. But I wanted to do things different. So we prepped and prepped and prepped, which we know how that goes. And then when we got ready to go to orals in Nashville, Tennessee, so the partner said, so, where's the deck? I'm like, I'm not going to do a deck. Okay. You guys know that's like, no, big no. I was like, no, we're going to go have a conversation. This is the commercial side of the business. Chief sales officers don't do decks. They have conversations. And I could see him go like, okay. So, so we need to place a team. So what team are you going to bring, to Nashville? I said, nah, it's just going to be me and you, I need you in the room. And he's like, you're not going to bring the team in so they can vet the team? I was like, nah, that's not what we're doing here. So, and Nate, you totally get this too. It's like, so this partner is totally uncomfortable with me coming after. I'm sure he was getting there going like, why did I ask him to do this? I'm not sure. But we go in. So there we show up in Nashville, and it's this hotel. And so we're waiting in the hallway because the other team went first. And then the other team comes out through the doors, 5 guys, good suits. I'm not going to mention the company, but it's one we all know. And so they're coming out, high-fiving each other. They were, like, this is great. And then we walk into this big conference room, at like this, hotel ballroom kind of things. There's one table in there with 4 people sitting there. It was each company's chief counsel and each company's chief sales officer. They're just sitting there. And so they're in there, and I walk in and I could just see him going like this. And the client I knew is like, okay. And so what I saw was the previous teams up on the screen was their last slide. And then on the flip chart, there was playbook, merger and acquisition playbook, and all these kind of assets that they had to win the work and everything like that. It's all standard stuff, right, you guys? Stuff you typically see. I walked in, sat down, and they said, oh, where are your slides? Like, oh, I'm not going to do slides. Okay, that's cool. And so I said, so where do we go? And I was like, if I think about doing a post-merger integration, your concerns are about day one. We gear up for day one. And on day one, you're going to have 3 issues, 3 things that you want to feel good about. The first one is, does the customer know the price? Because, two companies coming together, their prices were different. So on day one, you want the customers to be really clear about the price of the product, and then actually who to go to. What salesperson do I need to go? How do I transact with the company now? So that's number 1. And I could see them all going like, okay. And I said, number 2, 1 + 1 in a merger is not 2. So 1 + 1 is usually 1.6 or 1.5. So you're going to have to let go of a lot of salespeople. And so on day one, the salespeople have to know exactly who their clients are and which one of us is the guy that's going to sell to this client, this customer. So your salespeople have to be crystal clear on day one. And number 3, nobody can go to jail because of fraud or bribery or difficulties like that. This is one of those industries that stuff can happen. So nobody can go to jail. So that's my presentation. What questions do you have? And they were like, oh. So what I had done is I did not prep for orals. I prepped for day 1 workshop. So and they call that a presumptive close, and you know how that goes, Nate, too, because you're in the sales part. It's a presumptive close, but not a used car salesman presumptive close. I just look beyond this thing. It's like, let's go. Now, the partner that I was with, he's like, you just gave, if they don't choose us, you just gave the other team what they needed. And I said, no, I gave the client what they should do next. And that's about trust. So we had that conversation, great, rich conversation for the next hour and a half. And, you know, we're going through stuff and clearly, you know, kind of knew what I was talking about because I could talk about it. And then they said, okay, that's great. We got up, walked, and I timed this. I walked through the doors of the conference room. I got a tap on my shoulder from legal counsel saying, you won the work. I did not talk price, team, or deliverables, or timeline. So, you know, we won the work. It was basically a blank check. What better way to sell stuff than have a blank check because you're so convincing with your story? Cool? All right, that's my story. I call that my 18-second sales story. Now, I'll also give you a part of this story too, is that I had prepped for this thing, and it was about a week ahead of time. I had my business coach tell me, go have a conversation. Don't prep for this as if you're going to, you know, have a big PowerPoint deck. So I got spun a little bit at the back end of this thing, and it worked. So the point of that is, well, let me ask you, what did you learn from that story? What did you learn from that story? And I gave them an ambition, right? Of a story that they could write for this. So I'm going to fix this while we talk. But you know, I helped them develop their story, which was great. I love that too, as how we talked about this. Okay, so I'm going to add one more piece to this as I change the battery here. Another piece that I gave them that I want you to think about is I gave them unconventional wisdom. Those 3 things that I gave them was they could resonate with immediately, but it was unconventional wisdom. Nobody's walked in and said that to them before. And I love that too. And Paul, this is kind of for you with what you're going to put out there. As a speaker, you need unconventional wisdom. So all the stuff sounds normal and rote and routine, the stuff you always see. But what are some of the unconventional wisdoms that you have? And I look for those in my work. Another one that I give out there all the time with unconventional wisdom, if I'm asked to do an organization design, I say, you know, you guys all want to start with an org chart. Do you realize that an org chart is it's how exceptions get processed? If I were going to do a process map, would you want me to start with asking you where all the exceptions are? And they'd say, well, no. And I was like, an org chart does not tell you how work gets done. It tells you how it doesn't get done. Because it tells you where people have to escalate the problems. So let's start with what I call an org model and start with how the work gets done, which is in the lowest part of the organization because that's where value is created. It's not created in this room with all you guys. You're just managing exceptions. And when I did that with at one of the big pharmaceutical companies, and it was just like with 35 people in the room, and the president was like, yes, this is the right guy. Now, all the direct reports were going, no, we hate this guy, because they had all built their chart. That's how they were going to build their big fiefdoms out of this org change that was happening. But that wasn't where value happens. So anyway, that's a mini story of unconventional wisdom. So I encourage you too, as a part of your story, where's the unconventional wisdom? In the story I just told, the unconventional wisdom is, I walked in with 3 points. That's unheard of in the consulting world. Okay, cool. So I don't have much time left. So